Well, welcome everyone. I'm here in the studio with my friend Mike Shoeman. I've known Mike for over a decade now, longer than that, decade and a half,
Mm.
probably.
16 years. We met in 2006.
Wow. Okay, that's wild. So good memory. So
17
Mike,
years.
what's that?
17 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's been a long time. Yeah. So Mike and I are having this conversation today in response to my review of the Teal Swan docu-series, and this is sort of like the review of the review. And I had, in our conversation about doing this, I had invited Mike to call me out, if there's anything I was too harsh on or anything that, he thought I needed to be called out on. And he was like, well, Susie, that's not really my style. And so what I really appreciate about Mike is I would consider him an expert in communication because he knows how to speak and ask questions in a way that's just truly from a neutral space of curiosity and wanting to love people, wanting to understand people. So I think you'll find his approach very enlightening, and I hope you can learn from his approach in your everyday communications. And Mike, before we hit the record button, you were saying to me why this conversation is important to you. So I'd like
Mhm.
to hear your take on that.
Absolutely. And thank you for that introduction, Susie. And it's always a pleasure speaking with you and communicating with you. And you're quite a light in this world. So just want to give appreciation where it's due. Yeah, the reason why this conversation was very important to me and is very important to me is a lot of my work currently is bridging the gap between mental health and spirituality. I facilitate conversations not only in the spiritual with the spiritual through a circle of miracles. I do a monthly networking meeting where we have deep conversations, but also I facilitate conversations between mental health professionals and peers and consumers, and the common ground that we share that helps kind of help us transcend the hierarchy, the doctor-patient relationship, is our love and our interest in spirituality. So the when you had reviewed the docu-series, and there was a lot of talk about mental health concerns, about suicidal ideation. This is something that I've been really focused on almost for 20 years, but in the past 5 years, it's been kind of like at the forefront of my work, is having those deeper conversations and finding the intersection between the spiritual and mental health, and how do we have more transparent relationships around that. So I enjoyed your review. I watched the docuseries after listening to your review. I have about 16 pages of notes, but I'm just want to see where this conversation naturally leads us, because I think it's a very important conversation for the broader spiritual community. And yeah, about really getting past assumptions, getting past ideation, and really really tuning into each other's values, and having that curiosity and appreciation.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Mike. I really value your approach to all of this, and I do want to start off just by giving gratitude to Teal. In some ways, she's made it very easy for people to pick her apart.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of compassion for that. I know what it's like to be, kind of on the bleeding edge.
Mhm.
When you put yourself out there, that's what comes with it.
Mhm.
She has a ton more exposure than I do, so I have a lot of compassion for the position she's put herself in. So for some reason, Teal, if you're watching, thank you.
Mhm.
But I do have a lot of compassion for everything she's been through. And it's interesting because after I did this review, then a lot more came to me, like links were sent to me and such,
Mhm.
of people that were in her inner circle or people that have done her work and the negative experiences they had. And so I feel like some of the things that I intuited from watching the docu-series were pretty spot on. And there maybe have been some areas where I was harsh, but Yeah, I'm not sure really where to start other than that, but I know you have some thoughts and questions, so I think I'll let you take the lead.
Sure. No, the first question that came to me, Susie, after watching that, do you feel like that there's sort of like a competition, maybe not just between spiritual leaders like you and Teal, but is there, what comes up for you when I ask about the spirit of competition? Do you feel like she's a competitor, or what comes up when I ask that?
Oh, a lot of things come up. I'm not in the competition paradigm personally, so she doesn't affect me that way. But I can see the way she approaches her business because she is running a business.
Hmm.
Um, the way she's running the numbers with Matthias or whatever his name is,
Hmm.
her social media person, uh, you can tell that there is kind of a mindset of competition, like how do we get more numbers, how do we get more people, that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
that's what happens when you run a business where you need
Hmm.
exposure, like you do look at those things. But for me, one of the red flags was everybody needs this work, and like her approach to how um, she needs to have everyone enrolled in this work. And my approach is that the people who are aligned for my work and who will benefit from it will be magnetized to it. They'll come to me. The people who will benefit from somebody else's work will go to them. I feel that there is a right fit for people, and I might have people stick with me for 10 years and then move on to somebody else, or I may have people who work with a dozen other people and then
Hmm.
are ready for my work and they come to me. Like there's just a flow. That's how it is in the universe.
Hmm.
There's just a flow, and there's magnetism and demagnetism, and that's just how it works. So I don't function from the paradigm of competition. I just
Hmm.
know and trust that the people who are meant to benefit from my work will, and the people who aren't a fit won't come to me, and I'm okay with that. If you're not a fit for my work, I don't want you to come to
Hmm.
me, because then my work isn't going to work. Right? And I want my work to benefit people.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's what comes up for me when you ask me that question.
Yeah, yeah, and what I got a sense of just watching that, and again, when you're watching a docu-series, whoever's involved in that is kind of at the mercy of the storyteller as well. But what I got from that is that there's that line where it becomes a little bit more about more than competition, and starts to become a little bit about control. And a lot of that, I wonder how much of that is conditioning, how much of that is because of the severe abuse that Teal went through, that Teal has experienced. I had a lot of curiosity around the relationship with the family, because there was a lot of mention how she could forgive her abuser before she could forgive her family, and that they lived in a completely different reality. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because the more I learn about how severe the abuse is, what that underworld, that underbelly is really like, it is like living in a completely different reality. So part of me is curious about whether or not that severe trauma is almost like a grooming process for having people trying to control the situation, or trying to control the business, which manifests as competition. So that's what came up for me a lot of curiosity around just around what happened with the family, what's the relationship to the family, because if you don't trust your family, and that severe trust, that abuse severely compromises trust, it makes a lot of sense why I know Teal that had said that she had went to therapy, and trust was an issue, talking about how do I trust Blake more. How does that, how does the trust come up when you've been through something like that? It's completely understandable why trust is very difficult, especially when you're in a highly competitive environment. And I came away with the questions like, since when did spirituality become so competitive? Why? Because she even said something about being, aspiring to be more influential than the Pope. And that's the kind of thing where it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just curious about that competition, because in the circles that I travel and in where I study, that competitiveness is easily exploited. And, we live in an economic system where, it's about these hierarchy relationships, these abusive relationships. And she even said that, she wasn't making, she wasn't making enough money. And she charges $5,000 or whatnot for a client to come to her retreat or whatnot, but it's still not enough. She said, mentioning about something like having to marry a billionaire to be able to pay the legal fees and all of that. It's just that's the system. That's the competitive system, and
Yeah.
that's how they exploit it. That's how they exploit you. So
Yeah. And it very much appears that she's caught in that system. And I think the competition piece can come from ego, or it can appear as competition because it's a calling. So what I mean is, for me, I know that I'm meant to interface with millions of lives. I know my message is meant to reach millions. That's something that comes from my soul. That's a knowing that comes from my soul, right? And so my job is just to show up and deliver the message, and however it unfolds, it unfolds. I'm not here to try, I used to, but I'm not here to try to control the trajectory or how it happens. That clearly doesn't work. I've had to learn how to surrender that, right? But for someone who needs to feel security and safety in the world, someone like Teal who has been through tremendous trauma, you're going to do everything you can to cultivate environments in which you feel safe, cultivate relationships in which you feel safe. And that is my intuitive read of what she's doing with her business, with the people she lives with her relationships, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
She's just trying to feel secure and safe in this world. That's the bottom line as I see it. And so if you need to be competitive to make that happen, then you need to be competitive to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the dilemma. That is the dilemma, because then trust is compromised. Because to be competitive values really, in some ways, demands secrecy. It demands aggression. Yeah. So trust, that trust is very difficult to establish. That's what that's what I'm hearing. And yeah.
I found it interesting, the transparency piece, and I did talk about this in my review, where why do certain things need to be hidden? What is she trusting in or not trusting in? Like, if I'm trusting in life, I don't need to hide anything. I can be open and transparent. And in the last conversation that you and I had, I was like, ask me any question you have. If I'm not ready to talk about it, I'll let you know. But for the most part, I'm an open book, and I'll talk about anything, and I'll share anything. I believe that's the way of the new earth. Just that openness, honesty, transparency. And it's always a red flag for me when things need to be hidden, or when there needs to be something secretive. What is that about? And that's about the distrust, the insecurity, the not feeling safe. So we go back to that. And I have to admit, I have a hard time respecting someone as a spiritual leader who has to have that much control over things, and who can't be transparent, fully transparent. I struggle with that.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, again, that documentary or that docu-series, again, everyone's at the mercy of the storyteller, but what do you feel was not transparent in her work or in her?
Oh gosh, I have to go over my notes again. I don't remember. It's not as fresh in my
She
mind.
does a lot of deflecting. Yeah, I did notice that at least the way it was edited, there was a lot of deflecting.
Yeah, it was edited very heavily to show that she doesn't take responsibility for anything.
Mm.
And that I give credit to editing for that. I do believe that editing played a role in that. Let me just see if I can find it here.
Yeah, yeah, transparency. Mhm.
Part of it, she does talk about her image. This is in episode 4. She's afraid of slander.
Mm,
Why? Why are
mm,
you afraid of slander? If you know who you are, if you know your heart, let people talk about you. Who cares what they say?
mm,
Why are you so afraid of the slander, right? And then she talks about how image, she talks about image and what she can do to, I forget how she said it, so I don't want to misquote
mhm,
anything, but what she can
yeah,
do, what they can do to keep the image, her image clean, basically.
mm,
And why do you need to do that?
mm, yeah.
If you're not
Yeah.
hiding anything, why do you need to keep your image clean? Like your life should speak for itself.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, it comes back to what really happened during all that abuse, what really happened, in those darkest moments, and that's scary. There's a lot of they call it collateral. There's a lot of collateral that is imposed upon people. One
Mhm.
of the things that comes up a lot in my conversations is that people who become successful, it's predetermined how successful someone can become in politics or in media or whatnot, because there's collateral on them. There's something that is that compromises their character or shows them in a compromised light. So part of me is curious, wondering, is there someone who does have collateral over her? They go into this in the docu-series about Nexium, the bow,
Mhm.
where the only way you're going to be trusted to be in that inner circle is if they get some kind of footage of you in some kind of compromising position, even if they have to contrive it.
Yeah.
So that's so I'm curious. I'm curious about that because
Well, my understanding is a lot of people who have been part of MK Ultra or ritualistic satanic abuse, that they have that kind of collateral against them, or they have, they're being controlled in some way still by the people who inflicted the abuse. So I do have a curiosity about that with her, because she claims to have been satanically ritually abused. So it is very possible that maybe there are still some controls that they have over her in that regard.
yeah, and the network is very deep. I think they also said in the docuseries how they were being harassed and they were being gang stalked online. That's part of that whole network as well too. They know how to kind of push the right buttons and
Talk
trigger
about
you just the way.
Nexium, or
What's that?
are you talking about
No,
Nexium, or
no, I'm talking about the Teal Swan one where they
who
did
was
talk
being
about.
stalked and harassed?
Well, they got those 100 emails or something like that from the one person, I think, and then there's this constant, and that's very typical for people who have success and who are in the public light,
Yeah,
is that there's a lot of that kind of bullying, that kind of psychological bullying,
yeah. And
and
that's why they hired the private investigator, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
I thought that was because of the suicide, because of I thought that's what I read into it, but I might have to watch it again
Right.
to
No, I think you're right.
make
I
sure.
think you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
He
But
was,
they
he
did call
was
the
talking
police
to the
on that.
cops about, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I said, it's been a little while now since I watched.
yeah. I just saw it a couple of days ago. I'm kind of,
More
I'm kind
fresh.
of, yeah. I'm kind of amazed that I remembered as much as I did, but I took copious notes. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing. There's this whole underworld that people are not talking about, and that was some of the criticism that you came under a couple of days ago when you first posted that, is about the darkness. And that's the big triggering thing for a lot of people, those who have been in that system. They feel like they're not a part of the same world as people who have never been through that. And so there's a lot of projection. There's a lot of, it almost becomes competitive about who faced the most darkness, or who suffered the most, or who's
Right.
overcome the most. So that's so that was a big thing that came up for me when I first heard about your review, is that it almost seems like in some ways the spirituality is a competition to kind of compare notes about who suffered the most. And
Well, so
again,
let's talk about that comment. Someone had said to me on Facebook that if I can't look into their eyes, then I truly can't face darkness, or something to that effect. Or if I can't watch Teal's videos, then I truly haven't faced darkness. Was, is that correct? Do you remember that?
I'd have to look at it again, but yes, I remember. Yeah, that was that was the impression I got about just being able to watch it for 5 minutes and then feeling this darkness from you. So that's what I remember from that particular conversation.
Right.
And yeah, and that's and that opens up that whole can of worms of how is life, how is reality different from someone who has been through that? And is there a way to still have that conversation? Is there a way to still kind of get past the competitiveness of the suffering, and really hold the space for each other, and yeah, because it's deep. I mean, we're talking about those networks, the MK Ultra networks, and all of that.
Yeah.
It's even gotten to the point where there's this dissociation of disassociation of the brain as well. There's different alters, different characters. That's something that I've experienced just a little bit as when I was like into acting and serious method acting at one point. But we're talking about really tinkering with the brain chemistry, really changing a person's personality. So that's deep work. That's deep work.
Yeah. I don't know how we have the conversation with someone who's that deep in trigger.
Mm,
I look at my own relationship, and when I'm in a deep trigger, sometimes I leave my body and I cannot have the conversation. I need to wait until I reground, until I recenter to
mhm,
have the conversation. So, like, I haven't learned that skill fully for myself yet. So I
mm,
don't necessarily know how to elicit that from somebody else.
mm,
If something I've done or said triggers them, I don't necessarily know how to have that conversation. I can have compassion for them. I can love them. I can hold space for them, like you said.
mhm,
But if they're like, that's not always enough when
mm,
someone's in that deep trigger.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, is that you can hold space, but you can't do the work. You can't
Right.
do the work for them.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it's the kind of thing where I think it probably doesn't happen in just one interaction or one conversation. When you and I were talking the other day, I was kind of introducing you to some of my beliefs and my theories about how I think a lot of humanity is being conditioned to function at the 3 to 5 year old emotional level. And I first kind of really started reflecting on that with our friend Mike Thomas, who has done extensive work on that kind of that kind of science and that kind of work. And as I'm working with people who understand the plasticity of the brain, and the evolution of thought and the evolution of humanity, um, because of that understanding that technology has made us intellectually brilliant. But if we're still functioning at a 3 to 5 year old emotional level, which severe trauma does to a person, it's like giving somebody a broadsword, like a child a broadsword, and saying, do whatever you want with it. There's no consequences. And I think that's because we're being overstimulated in this part of the brain, which is safety. A lot of it is about how do we keep ourselves safe. That came up a lot in the Teal Swan video, docu-series, and desire. We're being conditioned to want things that the corporate media tells us we should want, or what's desirable. But then there's these whole other brain functions that are atrophied, that are underdeveloped. The front left lobe is curiosity. asking questions, being dedicated to ongoing inquiry,
Yeah.
being okay with being in the unknown. Because there's healing, there's tremendous healing in just being able to be in the unknown. And then the back right lobe is appreciation, deep appreciation. I think like coaching and the mindfulness movement is kind of tapping into that a little bit, but I feel there's still a lot of masking when it comes to appreciation. Like it's not very authentic. It's kind of like there's a script. It's like, oh yeah, appreciation. That's important. Authentic appreciation it takes a long time, I think, to develop. And so to have that conversation with someone, I think is just to hold space. And I
Wait till they're ready, I think.
wait till they're ready and just love them unconditionally. Ask questions. We have a saying where if you're explaining, you're not exploring. So if you're trying to give someone advice or trying to tell them what worked for you, or trying to push a method on them or a ritual or a routine, they shut down. But if you're exploring with them, understanding them, it kind of opens things up a little bit, and then they can do the work. They can do the work.
So true. Love that. Yeah, I need to adopt more of that in my own life. Yeah, that's very, very true. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So what else, Mike? What other questions do we have here?
Yeah. Again, the suicide part is something that I really wanted to talk about, because especially when you're giving somebody a proprietary solution like in the Teal Swan docu-series, there's these proprietary solutions. Come to my workshop, come to my retreat, and
Watch this video.
watch this video. And it's the kind of thing where the proprietary solutions is like automatically setting up that competitiveness. I think the woman's name was Sabrina, I think, who was in that workshop with Teal, and she was being confrontational about how she felt that the work was bullshit, that it's not working, that it's not helping. And then we saw that backstage scene where it was about cleaning this. I'll use the actual quote from Teal: clean this shit up, clean this shit up. And it creates that environment where safety and trust is compromised. It's no longer about providing a space of healing. It's protection. It's about the professional remaining a professional, and that's reflective not just in the spiritual community but also in the mental health community, where we have a lot of these conversations about how about suicide and about that free will. It's kind of like, if we have free will with our lives, who is some doctor or who is some spiritual teacher to tell me who I am or what I can do with my life? And I think that is like the undertone of a lot of these conversations, and it comes up a lot in our conversations as well with it. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of make that observation about how I'm curious as to, since that moment, since that incident, and we did see a little bit of a reconciliation later on. I think Sabrina had that moment in the water where she said, "I love you," and there was kind of like a catharsis there. I'm curious as to whether or not the approach or the belief or the interactions have changed since that moment around suicide. And this really walking on eggshells feeling in the professional world, whether it be a spiritual teacher or whether it be a mental health professional, around suicide, where people get very skittish. They get very skittish and they get in over their heads. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, because there have been 2 times in my life where I was suicidal. I did attempt it twice. I've had a near-death experience for one of those incidents, and It's just the kind of thing that I'm wondering how we can come together and not have it be about the image, not have it being about protecting a brand or protecting an image, and really being authentic with each other. So I'm wondering if those opportunities have come up since that docuseries was presented. So,
Well, I do want to jump in and say that Teal did do a rebuttal video, and she
mhm,
included that scene in the video because that was one of the very highly edited scenes.
yeah.
She included some audio and some video of what actually happened, and
Mm,
that was one of the very heavily edited scenes with Sabrina.
mm,
So I
mm.
just want to say that, and there is a link for that rebuttal video in the comments in my review video.
Oh, great, great.
Yeah.
What were some of the key components from that from the unedited version that
Well, the conversation was much longer, and
mm,
there was more to the conversation. Like Teal was leading her through a line of thinking, but
mhm,
they took out the middle part, and it made it seem like again, I forget the scene as it's been too long, but they
mhm,
made it seem a certain way that cast a negative light on Teal, basically.
yeah, mhm,
So in the rebuttal video where she shows the additional footage, it really does feel a lot better
mhm,
the way
mhm,
that conversation goes between Sabrina and Teal. It really does feel a lot better. So I want to
very good.
say that.
Very
But I think Teal is very confident in the way she talks about suicide. I don't think
good.
it's an issue for her at all. I don't think she feels she's in over her head.
Mhm,
And I haven't been deep enough into her work to really assess this fully, but to me it that kind of scares me because it does feel a little like she's in over her head.
mhm,
It scares me that she doesn't think that she is. So
mhm,
that's just my take. I could be totally wrong. Maybe she really does have skills with this area. I know a lot of people have said that her suicide video helped them tremendously. So,
mhm,
I've never been suicidal, so I don't know if I would watch her video. I might have a very different take on it than someone who actually is suicidal. Like maybe it really would help them. I don't know because I haven't been there myself.
mhm. Yeah, and everybody's different too. So
Right.
yeah, and it's obvious that she is striking the right chord, and I think there was that one scene where she actually received an award or an accommodation from some sort of mental health organization. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where I'm feeling like is there is there an opportunity to develop more trust? Is there an opportunity to develop more trust in that? Because I know as someone
Topic
who,
in general.
in that topic in general, but I'm also thinking in terms of like someone, where I'm trying to think back about where I was when I was feeling that way. I know that if somebody is telling me that my feelings or my experiences are not valid, um, I know that I would be very yeah, I would be very confrontational too. I would be very confrontational too. So yeah, so what comes up for me, and again, it's heavily edited. Anybody who's in that story is at the mercy of the storyteller. But it really it really looks like that there is an opportunity for interdependency, for cooperation, because it sounds like anybody who challenges there, and there was that conversation where she was challenged about not looking up to anybody, not having a role model or someone that she looks up to. After what she's been through, I don't blame her to tell you the truth. But
Yeah, and
it's
that
kind of
was
like,
another highly edited piece that she provided more audio in her rebuttal video about that
mm,
piece with Simon.
gotcha. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I think that's important that there is those rebuttals, because it helps us to deepen the conversation. and get past the judgments and get past get past what's on the surface. So good. I'm glad that there's more. I'm looking forward to exploring that some more.
Yeah. But it sounded like you were going somewhere with your question about suicide and having trust in that conversation.
Mm.
I'm just curious, do you feel like people who are suicidal hesitate to talk about it because they can't trust the professionals that they want to talk to about it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. Because if someone is a mandated reporter, they have to by law they have to report that to someone. That's why there's services like Suicide Anonymous, where you can talk to someone and have it be anonymous. But absolutely, I one time I went into a hospital, and they didn't care. They didn't care one bit that I was suicidal. They cared more about where I parked my car. And I went after that happened. I certainly didn't want to talk to anybody about what I was really feeling and what I was really going through for a very long time, because in that clinical setting, if you're expressing that truth, or if you're expressing that raw feeling, you're a liability, and that's scary. That's scary when someone has an image to protect, or they're afraid of the legalities, and
Yeah.
it really blocks authenticity.
I've been through that experience with a client. I am a mandated reporter, and I yeah, it's challenging because I didn't want to lose my client's trust, but I also had to disclose, like, hey, I'm gonna have to call somebody,
Yeah.
you know. So it is very tricky, and it is a very delicate uh, navigation.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that trust, oh man, that trust is everything. The trust is everything. And I almost feel, and this, I'm glad we're talking about this too, because again, it's that system that kind of gets in the middle of that gets in
Mhm.
the middle of that trust.
Mhm.
And if I had to guess, it's not just for people like you and me, it's also for people like Teal as well. Always having to be protective of that brand, of that business. And yeah, so how do we transcend that? How do we work with the system, if it's even possible to work with the system, to get back to that kind of trust and authenticity.
Yeah. It takes a lot of mastery. That I don't really know how to answer that, Mike. I don't have a good answer for that.
Mm. And there doesn't need to be an answer. I think the answer is just in the relationship, holding the space.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is where I know this is where I spend a lot of time,
Yeah.
is really being able to provide the space where people can be honest about their experiences.
Mhm.
And I believe the system is changing. I believe there are ways to kind of come away from those codependent relationships where it's about the doctor, pulling their rank or pulling their hierarchy, and coming back to more interdependency, less codependency, more interdependency. Again, I think that comes back to curiosity and deep appreciation, and taking time. One thing I've noticed is there's a lot of people who are in a hurry, especially now when there's so much conflict. And I believe a lot of that conflict is contrived, that it's forcing people to speed up, to make mistakes. And I think the answer is just slowing down, just really slowing down, and being present.
Being present, breathing with someone,
Mhm, mhm.
go a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What else is on your 16 pages
Mhm,
there? I'm wildly
mhm.
curious.
Oh, wow. Well, the one thing that, and I think I touched on the 5 points I really wanted to bring up and discuss here. But one of the things that she said through that docuseries at least twice was, "I hate spirituality. I hate spirituality." I wonder. I'm very curious about what that is about. What that is about.
I have somewhat of a resonance with that, and I think
Mhm.
for me, when I feel that way, it's because there's a there's like a fakeness or a bypassing that can happen
Yeah.
in
Yes.
spirituality, and I don't know if she's referring to that, but I know for me that's a huge frustration. For example, there's someone in my community who's just it's got to be all love and light, and to confront and face his own shadow, it just he won't go there, and he
Mm,
gets frustrated when he makes himself a victim in different ways, and gets frustrated when people won't talk to him, and like just all these interesting things, and it's like I've heard the other side of the story, people associated with him, and it's like he's not looking at his own shadow.
mm,
And so it's this like false spirituality thing. And if that's what she's talking about, yeah, I don't like that either. That's
mhm,
icky. That's not real.
mhm.
I
Yes.
don't know what she's really saying when she says that. But
Mhm.
it is I will say it is very challenging to be in a spiritual business,
Yeah.
because if you're selling a widget, it's pretty cut and dry. Here's the widget. Here's what it does. Here's what you can expect from it. This is what it looks like. This is the packaging. This is the
Mhm.
price. Here you go. When you're selling a service, uh, at least for me with my services, I don't know what it's going to look like until the end of the session with that client,
Oh yeah.
because I have like one main objective, that's to guide them back to their own wisdom, and I don't know what form that path takes. It's different every time, even if it's the same person over and over again. It's different every time. So I don't. It's not prescriptive for me, and it it's sometimes difficult to describe my work and what I do because it can be so different with everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm working in multi-dimensional levels, and that's difficult to market. That's difficult to describe.
Yeah.
So I can relate to her on those terms of marketing a spiritual business. Um, I don't even like to call it a business, for my work, for what I
Yeah.
do is my sole mission. But
Mhm.
because I'm in those systems, needing to pay rent and feed myself, I put that business label on it because that's what it is. And I want people to respect it that way also. If
Mhm.
I just say, this is my sole mission, here's my work, pay what you want for it, I may not be able to pay my rent. So
Yeah.
I put a price on it. I value it in a certain way.
Mhm.
And it's a very interesting way to be in the world.
Yes.
It's not a typical job. Um, it's not. It takes a tremendous amount of trust
Mhm.
to show up in the world this way.
Yeah.
Trust that I'll be supported, trust that I'll have food to eat, trust that I can pay my rent, all those things. It's taken a tremendous amount of trust, like that life supports me.
Mhm.
And so that's why I said what I said earlier about safety and security. Uh, if you've been part of satanic ritualistic abuse, you're not going to feel a lot of safety and security. And so you're going to want to build your business like a fortress
Yeah.
so that at least you're, taken care of in this earthly sense.
Mhm.
So I might
Mhm.
have gotten a little off topic there. I kind of got passionate.
No, let's go there. Let's go there. I'm
Okay.
passionate about that too, Susie, because
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, I was a business major. I was, I worked in finances. I worked at a Morgan Stanley office almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
So absolutely, that is something that I think the spiritual community really needs to start talking about. At Circle of Miracles, I'm on the board at Circle of Miracles. I'm their treasurer. We talk a lot about, where do we draw that line when somebody comes in to speak, and when are they pitching, a business or a product.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm advocating for having those deeper conversations about at what point does it get uncomfortable and why is it getting uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're called to do this work,
Mm-hmm.
but we live in an extractive system where the
Mm-hmm.
values are not in alignment with what we represent as spiritual entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I kick these hornets nests all the time, and not mean to, like you said, spirit, about the spiritual bypassing. I was on somebody's site. It was someone who trains spiritual coaches, and I think she asked the question, like, how many people should you be speaking in front of, to be able to feel satisfied, or to be successful? And I said, well, it depends. Is that spiritual teacher looking to become an authority, or are they more interested in equal partnership, everybody doing the work? And they said, well, what does that matter? Well, I said, well, I mean, if you're looking to be an authority, you're going to need a million people, or you're going to need, millions of people, to be able to feel satisfied. But if you're truly looking for reciprocity, if you're looking for connection and relationship, you can get that with just one person. You can get that just, with intimacy.
I
And
love
the reaction to that was, well, you need more work. They're telling this to me. You need more work to do. If you don't respect authority, then I'm certainly not a match for you. And it's like, wow, wow. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like when those beliefs or that ideation doesn't line up, there's this ouch, there's this, this pushback, and and it shuts down. And yeah, that's the conversation I think, I would love to keep having, is that we can change the system,
Yeah.
but in order to change the system, it does take more equal partnerships. And and this is from my work and my study, is that the more we try to have transactional relationships, the more that system has us. It keeps us in that debt-based system. But there's ways to change that, and that's where I like to play.
This is so interesting. So just today I had a session with somebody and he actually agreed to let me release it to the public. So this is going to come out on my YouTube in about a month. But one of the things we talked about is collaboration with other practitioners. And Prime Creator gave very specific directions about how to know with whom to collaborate. And it's pretty simple. It's heart-based. So I'll tell you what Prime Creator said, because this is really, I think everyone, would benefit from this. When you're looking to collaborate with someone, how does your heart feel? Does your heart expand or contract? And don't listen to what they're saying as much as feel the person, because people have beautiful spiritual ideas. People have beautiful business ideas, but it's all up here. And if they're not centered in their hearts, that collaboration isn't going to be a good one. For those of us who are heart centered. Now, if you have two people up here, they're going to be on that same frequency. Like, they might have a great collaboration and do the thing that way. But for those of us who are wanting to operate from our hearts, there has to be a heart coherency with the person with whom we're collaborating. So I just thought that was very interesting, and how relevant for this conversation we're having
Oh
now.
yeah, absolutely.
Because this is the way we're going. This is the way. We also asked, is there something that needs healing within the lightworker community? And the answer was, we have been heavily programmed with having to do everything ourselves. And so a lot of people are
Yeah.
still operating in that paradigm of having to do everything themselves. And I include myself in that. Like, I'm still
Yeah.
trapped in that program to a great degree, and I'm working to get myself out of it. But
Mhm.
that is one of the things that is separating us, dividing us, and not allowing us to come together to create something bigger and more powerful. And we're talking about Sedona specifically because there are a lot of people here all trying to create their own thing, and we just can't seem to come together. And part of that is, shadow influence trying to keep us apart.
Yep.
And part of it's the wounding. But Prime Creator was saying when we come together, there's going to be this portal that opens up where the light is magnified and where we're going to have a lot of power. And so, I do believe it's time that we figure this out and find ways to come together
It's
to
beautiful.
amplify
Yeah,
light.
I resonate strongly with that, Susie. Yeah, and I can tell you too. Yeah, that having to do it all your own is a big trap. Is a big trap. I think we're going on about 4 years now. One of the most prominent leaders put out a call on how do we end world hunger, and they made this competition. And my team submitted an idea where, why don't we not make it a competition, but why don't we take all of these ideas together, build what we call a values matrix so that we can implement all the ideas and end hunger, end poverty in 5 years or less.
Yeah.
The organization representing that leader, they wanted complete legal control of it before they would even consider or talk about it. And I kind of credit, we can, that's the thing. We can end poverty in less than 5 years. That there's no doubt in my mind about that. But it's this protection, this need to, this need to still maintain power and control that's keeping it from being right now. But we are powerful. We can do it. We're having this conversation. We're able to have this conversation, and that's evidence that this is emerging. This is emerging. And we're bringing this to light. So yeah, and it takes time to build that trust. But once that trust is there, that opening, is it's always been there. It's just how do we get ourselves ready? How do we prepare ourselves to see it? Because it's always there, and it's always going to be there.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It is about our own healing. I to a large degree, I do believe. And for me personally, I've struggled with this idea because, I've been burned in the past. I've collaborated with people, and then they turned out to be people of integrity that, I find highly questionable. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I even associate myself with these people? Like and that's scary because one of my values is integrity. And especially if I'm running a spiritual business, like I have to have the highest integrity. And so that is, I'll just say it, that is one of my fears in collaborating with other people. What if their integrity does not meet my standards? And I find that out later after investing time, money, energy, whatever. And then my name is tarnished because of my association with them. Like, that's a fear that I have.
Yeah, and that's where it comes to investing the time, taking the time to really clarify those values. Like integrity. What does integrity mean to you, Susie? How does someone demonstrate integrity?
They walk their talk. And they, especially if they're working with clients, they do it in a way where they're not trying to control the client, where they're not pushing boundaries, trying to get the client to do something that's uncomfortable or dangerous to them. There are practitioner values that I hold, and I actually have them listed on my website. Those are the biggest ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're all talk and you're not living it,
Yeah,
your work is not going to be very effective.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, someone recently, one of my clients recently said to me, I forget how he said it, but it was like, at the end of the session, I didn't feel so great, but later I absorbed some of the energies and codes that you gave me during the session, and I really started to feel a lot better. And he recognized that I transmit, you know, certain
Mhm.
energy signatures and codes, and that they kind of do their own work. And
Mhm.
my understanding is that that comes from the work that I've done on myself. I now carry those templates within my being, within my field. They get transmitted when someone
Mhm.
comes into session with me.
Mhm.
Or, you know, they get transmitted to whomever wants to receive them. They're, you know, they're freely available. You don't have to pay for them or anything. But when someone comes into session, they're specifically coming to receive that, right? So
Right.
there's like that higher concentration, perhaps, that they'll receive. But I thought that was very powerful because, you know, I've done such deep work on myself
Mhm.
that just to be in my presence can be healing. And that's what I've always wanted. That was always my goal from the very beginning. I said,
Mhm.
I want to be able to walk into a room and have someone experience healing just by being in my presence.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mm.
that's starting to happen more,
Mhm.
which is really sweet for me.
That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. And the fact that you know that now, what I'm getting is that, you're owning that, and that's what you expect, from others. And what came up for me as you were describing integrity as well too is what what I've been noticing now more and more is when people are living in their integrity, the conversation is not a sale anymore. It's not one person trying to convince the other person. It's about how do we create this a safe enough environment to try something, to try new things, and that's where the values come in. Really being explicit about those values, and that's great, Susie. I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thanks.
Really proud of
And,
you.
and you know, I think circling back to the conversation about Teal, I think her work does have some integrity because people
Mhm.
are experiencing healing and growth and transformation from going through her work. So I want to give
Mhm.
credit where credit is due. You know, this whole review
Mhm.
of the docu-series was not a bash Teal thing. This was,
Right.
let's develop discernment about practitioners with whom we choose to work.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge that because people are
Absolutely.
experiencing growth through her work.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the whole thing is not a trial. I mean, we've been conditioned to be in a society where we feel like we have to punish, or there's so much punitive, energy going on. That it's not a trial. It's an opportunity for a deeper conversation. And that's a beautiful thing. There's this Gestalt prayer that I go back to all the time. Is that I'm not on this earth to live up to your expectations. You're not on this earth to live up to mine. If we get together, it's a beautiful thing. If not, it can't be helped. It doesn't have to be helped. And I think that's what I'm feeling a lot of when I'm watching that docu-series and feeling that energy about how her mission, has to be exposed to everybody or all that. It's we're not on this earth to live up to each other's expectations. That's what I'm getting a strong feeling about, just reflecting on it, that it's not a trial. It's where do we align? Where is there potential, and where is there an opportunity for expressing truth, expressing feelings?
Yeah, and where can we learn and grow?
Yeah.
You know, and that concept of mirroring. You know, I said in the beginning of
Mhm.
my review video, there are places where I really resonate with what she's saying, with what she's feeling, and there are, you know, places where I don't. But,
Mhm.
you know, she's my mirror.
Mhm.
She's an interesting mirror for me to look into.
Mhm.
And, you know, if she's willing to look, I'm her mirror as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's you know, it's interesting.
That's compelling. Yeah. What comes up for me is that if it's all love, if it's all love and we're all one with love, it's really just one soul. It's just 8,000 different stories, or I'm sorry, 8 billion
I was
different
going to say
stories.
only 8,000.
Yeah, 8 billion stories that make up that soul. So where do our stories intersect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that we want to cover today? I'm just taking a quick look at my notes here.
Mhm. I'm complete. I'm very complete, Susie. There's there's some things I'll want to talk to you about after recording is over. But that's I'm complete.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I just want to touch a little bit on the discernment. We don't have to spend too long on this, but
Mhm.
just this idea of developing discernment when we go to practitioners. Um, it's very tricky because someone in desperation mode is not going to be able to exercise discernment in those moments. And so that's what scares me about practitioners that I feel are ill-equipped to handle certain situations.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know how to teach discernment necessarily.
Mhm.
I don't know if
Mhm.
that's something that you can speak to, how to teach
Mhm.
discernment.
Do you wanna try an exercise, an activity?
Okay, sure.
Cool. I call this well, it's called a question circle because normally it's in a circle, but more this is going to be more like a question dialogue. So I'm going to have you catch up with what you just said about discernment, and I just want you to ask me a question about it, and then I'm going to answer off the top of my head, and then I'm going to spin that into a new question that I'll give back to you. We'll go back and forth maybe a few times,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about discernment.
Okay.
Okay?
So how does someone develop discernment?
Hmm. By questioning, by learning the value of a question. Um, when when we're in a state of the brain and not the heart, it's all about ideology, competing beliefs. But the question turns it over. It opens it up. So instead of like I kind of think of it, in the terms of like metaphysics or quantum physics, it's kind of like you're opening up the wave function when you ask a question. So when something is fixed, you open up possibility again. So for discernment, being able to ask the next question helps to explore rather than judge. So I would catch up to what I just said and I would ask you, what are you most curious about exploring, Susie?
Discernment or just in general?
In general.
What am I most curious about exploring? I think I'm most curious about exploring my soul mission and how I want to express that and how I want to live my mission. Um, yeah, I think that's my deepest curiosity.
Catch up to that, and then spin a new question that I'll respond to.
Okay. When you think about your soul mission, Mike, what sensations arise in your body?
Mm. I have no more body. I'm complete light, complete light. I recognize the body as a tool, as an illusion to the expression of light and love. Um, yeah. So right now, as I'm talking about, boom, big opening in my heart. Um, yeah, because I've done a lot of work in the mind and in the brain, but the heart just opens up because the belief that there's no throwaway people, that nobody is expendable, and everybody has value. I do feel like that I am the heart of this 8 billion, the illusion of 8 billion people who are, really just one organism with different stories.
Mm.
So yeah, let me catch up to that. Whew. I know the answer to this, and I would love you to just explore it as much as take as much time as you need to explore even more. But what is your soul mission, and why is it important?
What is my soul mission?
Mm-hmm.
The short way of describing it is restoring heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the second part of the question? What does it look like?
Why is it important?
Why is it important?
Mm-hmm.
Whew. uh, it's important to me because I feel it very much as a mission for humanity and for this planet.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that this planet has been targeted and gone through like this state of forgetting. This planet used to be heaven. This planet used to be a place of very high frequency, and that was co-opted. And so there are a group of souls who have been sent here to restore the frequency that this planet is meant to be. And I feel very strongly that I'm one of those souls. And it's very important because this planet is a template for our solar system, our galaxy, our universe, the multiverse. My understanding, again, this is my understanding, we're going through this ascension process, and this planet is leading the way. So once planet Earth ascends, then the solar system can ascend, then the galaxy can ascend, then the universe can ascend. So it's this like domino effect. And so much hinges on what happens here. And so I just have a lot of passion, a lot of heart, a lot of soul for what happens on this planet and restoring her to her original condition.
Breathe that in. Breathe that in, and then I'll let you let that answer guide you to the next question. I'm loving this, by the way, Susie. I'm this is like candy for me.
Hmm. What is your favorite way to help humanity?
My favorite way to help humanity is to provide spaces where time is valued. My favorite way is to provide nurturing environments. Something that I've recently discovered is in competitive dialogue or in competitive structures, there is a lot of, this rushing, that time is not taken. I love to take my time and really crunch the numbers. I'm really a numbers person. One of the things that I found out recently was $1, $1 American is its value is given because of almost 17 hours of exploited labor. And it's of people doing things they don't want to do, that's not life affirming. The way I like to express my mission is to change the value of time. Where a lot of people are focused on changing the value of a currency, trying to change the perception of limited resources, or what we think of as limited resources, is to change the value of time, because everything is in this moment. And when there's the spirit of exploration and of curiosity, that's very life affirming. So the way I express that is I'm changing the financial system, and just enjoying the story, doing it, enjoying the story that my life is telling in order to do that.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. Okay, we'll go two more times, and then I'm going to ask you about discernment again. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, why is talking about money so difficult?
Well, I don't think it is.
Mhm. Great, 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 great. Okay, okay, I'll reframe. Why is it easy for you to talk about money?
Uh, I personally have done a lot of work
Mhm,
with the topic and the energy and frequencies of money, and um, I see it as pretty neutral.
mhm,
You know, it's one method and form of exchange.
mhm.
Uh, so I don't know. I guess I feel like once you get to a neutral space about it,
Mm,
there's not as much charge in it, and
mhm.
um, yeah.
Cool. I'm very curious what this question is going to be now. This is getting good.
Um, yeah, I don't have it yet. Let's see.
Mm,
I don't know why this image is coming, but if you had a cave full of gold,
mhm.
what would you do with it?
Mm. If I had a cave full of gold, what would I do with it? A cave full of gold.
Yeah, I don't know why a
Wow.
cave, but that's what I
Mm,
saw.
mm.
Not a bunker, not a vault, just a cave.
Mm. I would, I would invite everyone who wanted to come and take whatever they wanted, under the condition that we have the conversation about why they believe this is more valuable than people. Why, so you've come all this way, you can take what you want. Um, and I would want to have the conversation in exchange for taking what you want is, why is this valued more than human life? Mm, okay. So what did you discern during that conversation?
What did I discern?
Mm,
Well, I can just, it's also partly because I know you, but I can just feel your realness.
mm,
I can feel your heart, and your desire for humanity to thrive and not be imprisoned by systems. And I can really feel your heart and your desire for humanity in that. Um, Again, it's also partly because because I know you, but there were a few moments in that conversation, where I really felt that with you and from you. So
mhm, yeah.
yeah,
What
and I
I
just
just,
heard that you're honest also,
yeah, thank you,
that your expression is honest.
thank you.
Yeah.
What I discerned is that you are very good at discerning, and now I'm curious about, yeah, why, yeah, I'm curious about, what would it, well, maybe I should ask this. Do you feel more confident about your ability to discern?
I do, and I give a lot of credit to my partner
Mhm,
because he's a very strong critical thinker.
mhm,
And now when I encounter people and situations, I have more angles from which to look at people and situations because
mhm,
I am trusting by default. That is my
yeah,
default mode. I trust.
mhm,
Even though my trust has been broken many times, I
mhm,
trust until you give me a reason not to.
mhm, mhm,
And it's not that I've become more distrusting
mhm,
with discernment and critical thinking, but I've learned to examine more angles, if that makes sense, more
yeah,
perspectives.
yeah, Absolutely. That's wisdom. Yeah, that's that's definitely wisdom. Yeah, yeah, and that's I share that with you, Susie. I'm generally very trusting too, which is why I think I find myself I'm not alone. I have a very strong team that I work with, but I find myself feeling alone a lot because I think people are who don't trust or who have an agenda or ulterior motives don't come near me. They don't want to be anywhere near me because I do
You cut through the BS.
I'm vigilant about it. Yeah. I mean, I understand how the power structure works, how hierarchy works, and some of the some of the blind spots because I've had to work through some of my own blind spots.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, yeah, this is a very compelling mission, a very compelling life story. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike.
Well,
Thank you
thank
for
you, Susie.
being in this conversation with me. And those of you watching, I really hope that this was helpful for you. I'd love to hear your experience of our conversation. And, I know we sort of started off as this is a review of the Teal Swan thing, but really, Teal has served to open up deeper conversations, broader conversations. So I'm grateful to you, Mike, for taking the time to have these conversations with me. And I
Mhm.
encourage you guys to start having more of these conversations with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. These are important conversations to dive into, and it's time. It's time we have these real, honest conversations with each other. So thank you again, Mike. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Susie. I appreciate you too.